I'm Hoot Waterfield. Welcome to the Resistance. Thought I'd take an opportunity to talk about something different. You see, for the longest time, I've been putting around in my head this theory. Probably better to call it a layman's hypothesis regarding autism. You see, autistics, for those who don't know, suffer from neurological deficits that don't allow them to interact with the rest of the world the way you and I would normally do. Now, there are a couple of prevailing theories behind what causes autism, but there's nothing definitive, at least nothing I've come across in my readings. Now, before I proceed much further, I'm not a doctor. I don't pretend to be one. I don't play one on TV. And I'm not offering any kind of medical advice here. I'm just sharing the layman's hypothesis based on personal observations. What I suppose is that autism is not this unique spectrum of individuals who represent 1% of the population, but rather there is another parallel set of folks who suffer from the same disorder. Now, there are a couple of prevailing theories behind why or what causes autism. One of them has to do with congenital inability to generate the appropriate neurons in those parts of the brain necessary to interact with the rest of the world. And then there's a theory that around the age of 2, when our brains can no longer expand, our bodies and our minds make a conscious decision to start pruning away those neurons that aren't being stimulated to allow room for the ones that are, so they can grow stronger and larger. Whichever the cause may be for autism, the results are quite clearly identifiable. And what we've discovered is that depending upon who's doing the counting, it's somewhere around 1% of the population who suffer from autism. My theory, my layman's hypothesis is that autistics are not alone in their neurological deficits, that there is another group who are on a parallel plane of neurological deficits, but that's not associated necessarily with their inability to communicate with the outside world, but rather their inability to empathize with the outside world. And these are sociopaths. And the theory goes that either congenital or neuron pruning, those parts of the brain that are associated with the ability to feel emotion for anything outside themselves, are pretty much hamstrung, and those parts of the brain never develop. And just like autistics, they grow up without the ability to interface with the world the way that you and I might do so. What does that mean? Well, if you're an autistic, you get diagnosed pretty early. At age 2, you got a clinical diagnosis of autism if you're suffering from it. For sociopaths, If I'm not mistaken, the diagnosis can't come until you've reached your mid-20s. An autistic at age 2 will receive help. A sociopath at age 2 will not. And as a consequence, they'll never grow the conscience, or at least learn the correct behaviors necessary to function in society. They may learn to fake it, but it will be an effort for them to maintain it. I fear that those 3 million folks who roam the streets as on the sociopathic disorder scale have caused us a great deal of harm, but I don't know how to address it. We can't determine who's going to have a conscience at the age of 2. We can determine who has autism, and we can evaluate it and provide them help to offset their deficiencies. But we don't know how to we don't know how to serve, but we don't know how to help an sociopath. We don't know how to help a sociopath at the age of 2. Now, there was a scientific researcher who passed away recently, who made the uncomfortable revelation some years back, some 20, 25 years back, that while studying the brains of serial killers, that he himself had the mind, at least the neurologically mapped mind, of a serial killer. And he says that the only thing that probably kept him from following the path of these serial killers was the environment in which he lived. Now, he got lucky. He learned to be a member of society where looking out for your fellow man was part of his conditioning. Not all sociopaths are brought up that way. And as a consequence, we all suffer for that. Is there a solution? I don't know. I just know that I look around and I see what's happening, and I ask myself, is it possible those 3 million people who are likely suffering some sociopathic disorder are at the root cause of this? And if so, how do we pull back from the brink and identify these folks that we all might do better? This video is getting a little long, so I'm going to leave it at that. I may come back and visit it again at a later time. But for now, good night and good luck.